Tonight, a seismic shift is underway along the world's longest undefended border. Canada is quietly, but deliberately, beginning to untangle its economy from the United States. For decades, the two nations have been locked in the tightest economic embrace on the planet. But now, Ottawa is sending a new message: caution, realism, and preparation. Canadian leaders are signaling that the era of relying so heavily on their southern neighbor is ending. This isn't a dramatic announcement, but a steady drumbeat of warnings and policy shifts. Top officials, including the governor of the Bank of Canada, are telling citizens to brace for a future where prosperity is no longer a given. The world is fracturing, old alliances are fraying, and the rules of global trade are being rewritten. At the heart of this change is a fundamental reassessment of Canada's relationship with the US. The global system that Canada depended on since World War II is breaking down. That system, led by the US, was built on open markets and expanding trade, but now it's cracking under protectionism and geopolitical tension. For Canada, a nation built on trade, this is an existential moment. The country is charting a new course for a more turbulent world, choosing resilience over vulnerability. While Washington projects strength, Ottawa is sounding a note of sober assessment. The great economic decoupling has begun. To grasp the magnitude of this shift, you need to understand the history. The Canada-US economic relationship is unique, built on mutual trust and deep integration. After World War II, landmark agreements like the Auto Pact merged industries and created a seamless North American production line. Billions in goods and services crossed the border daily. For most Canadian businesses, the US was an extension of their home market. 3/4 of Canadian exports have traditionally gone south. This integration created jobs, fueled innovation, and raised living standards. Canada provided resources. The US provided a massive, stable market. NAFTA and its successor supercharged this relationship, eliminating tariffs and creating a continental trading bloc. For decades, this was the pillar of Canada's economic strategy. When the US boomed, so did Canada. But this deep integration also created vulnerability. Any chill in the US market, or shift in policy, sent shockwaves through Canada. For years, the benefits outweighed the risks. Now, as the US itself becomes a source of uncertainty, Canadian leaders see dependency as a liability. The once unbreakable bond is showing cracks. Canada's economic future can no longer rest on a single partner. The time for change is now. The first clear signal of this new reality came as a somber economic forecast. Tiff Macklem, governor of the Bank of Canada, warned that the era of easy growth is over. The economic tailwinds that propelled Canada for generations are fading. At the core, declining productivity. Canada is falling behind its peers, especially the US, in productivity growth. Businesses are investing less in technology and innovation, making it harder to compete and raise living standards. This is no longer an abstract problem, it's a clear and present danger. Without a major course correction, incomes will stagnate, and the dream of each generation doing better than the last is at risk. Leaders are preparing the public for a period of adjustment and sacrifice. The old model, relying on housing booms and US proximity, isn't enough. This new era of frankness is a radical departure from the past. Canada needs a new plan. And honest assessment is the first step. The alarm bells are ringing in Ottawa. Beyond Canada's internal struggles, a larger story is unfolding. Canadian leaders now openly declare the post-World War II economic order is over. For 75 years, American-led institutions and free trade fueled global prosperity. That world is gone, replaced by great power competition, especially between the US and China. The global economy is fracturing into competing blocs. Universal trade rules are giving way to deals based on politics and security. For Canada, a champion of the rules-based system, this is dangerous. The predictability that built Canada's modern economy is vanishing. Institutions like the WTO are weakening. Countries are using tariffs and sanctions as weapons. The pandemic and war in Ukraine exposed the fragility of global supply chains and fueled a push for self-reliance. The era of hyper-globalization is ending. Strategic decoupling is here. Canada's economic strategy must be reimagined for a world where alliances are tested and market access is no longer guaranteed. Leaders are sounding the alarm. The world has changed, and Canada must adapt. The end of an era is now a reality. The main driver of Canada's pivot is the changing US posture. The US, once the champion of free trade, now prioritizes domestic interests, even at allies' expense. Protectionist policies, industrial subsidies, and unpredictable trade actions have created uncertainty for Canadian businesses. Access to the US market is no longer guaranteed. Rules can change overnight. This unpredictability poisons investment and forces Canadian companies to rethink their future. Economic decoupling means deliberately reducing dependence on the US and managing risk. It's not about ending trade, but about national risk management. Canada is diversifying, seeking new markets and partners to avoid collapse if the US falters. The weaponization of trade and disrupted supply chains have shown that interdependence is now a vulnerability. In a more dangerous world, Canada needs economic sovereignty. Securing critical supplies in key industries is now a national priority. Canada's response is a two-pronged strategy. First, aggressive trade diversification, especially with the Indo-Pacific and Europe. Major trade deals are in place. Now, the focus is on turning them into real jobs and growth. Government-led trade missions and support help businesses enter new markets. The goal, reduce reliance on the US and boost East-West trade. Second, strengthening domestic industries and innovation. Policies encourage investment in R&D, technology, and key sectors like AI and clean tech. The aim is to make Canadian companies globally competitive and resilient. The pandemic revealed vulnerabilities in critical supply chains. Canada is now onshoring or friendshoring vital goods, balancing efficiency with resilience. The new model, prosperity, security, and self-reliance in a fractured world. Canada is building an economy fit for the future. A striking contrast has emerged between Ottawa and Washington. Canadian leaders speak with stark realism about the challenges ahead. In the US, the narrative remains one of exceptionalism and market strength. Record stock markets and GDP growth mask the economic anxiety many Americans feel. Canada's candidness is a strategic choice, preparing its people for tough policy changes. Admitting to economic weakness is rare in politics, but Canada is betting that transparency builds trust and resilience. This is not pessimism but pragmatism. Canada isn't turning inward, it's adapting to a new global reality. The country seeks to lead a coalition of nations that still believe in open trade and predictable rules. The party of post-war prosperity isn't over, but the music has changed. Pretending the old song is still playing is the most dangerous choice. Honest assessment and bold adaptation are now the only paths forward. Canada is facing the future with eyes wide open.